Today, we read the secret emails of powerful video game companies and Sega. This is CheckPoint. Welcome to CheckPoint. The more things change, the more they look the same.
Oh, that's right. We're now coming to you from Moonbase Mark 6.
For all the work we've put into setting it up, it's also been pleasantly quiet.
I chalk that up to us still not having internet access.
We've talked a lot about Microsoft's attempted acquisition of Activision Blizzard, and in particular, the FTC's concerns about such a merger, so why stop talking about it now? Especially when all the relevant parties just spent 5 days in court to argue their sides, and it brought us so much fascinating information. Here's the quickest summary I can bring myself to present. It should come as no surprise to anyone, but the carefully cultivated mask of an chill, unbothered Microsoft has slipped all the way off during this process. While publicly, Xbox and its head honcho Phil Spencer have recently maintained the attitude of, hey man, the console wars aren't even a real thing, and if they were, well, then Sony's won it, and that's whatever, dude. Whereas internal emails reveal that Microsoft believes they can crush Sony by outspending them and are more than willing to do that. Related, PlayStation CEO Jack Ryan was polite yet firm in saying that Sony considers only Microsoft their competitor, not Nintendo, because the Switch simply can't run all their fancy games. Of course, it's to Sony's benefit to frame this as a two-horse race because that makes it harder for Microsoft to claim they aren't trying to create a monopoly. Which is also why Phil Spencer was caught waffling between his deposition and his testimony as to whether Microsoft thinks Nintendo is a real competitor or not. For what it's worth, it's clear the FTC doesn't think Nintendo is in this conversation, as only Microsoft and Sony were asked to be involved in these proceedings. Sony has said they won't even send Activision Blizzard PlayStation dev kits because they couldn't risk Daddy Xbox poking around the source code. So deep is the distrust between these companies. It's little wonder that Xbox delayed the upcoming Starfield for so long to iron out all the usual Bethesda bug riddling, because the fear of Starfield becoming another timed PlayStation exclusive like Deathloop and Tokyo Ghostwire was the impetus for Microsoft to buy Bethesda in the first place. Starfield specifically, which of course is now an Xbox exclusive, as Phil Spencer suddenly decided all Bethesda titles would be during one meeting in 2021, much to the surprise of Xbox CFO Tim Stewart, who pointed out that while sure that's theoretically good for Xbox, cutting off PlayStation sales will be very bad for Bethesda's bottom line, which is a company you own now. Much later, when this whole Activision Blizzard thing kicked off in the public eye, Bethesda's senior global marketing and communication VP Pete Hines was understandably confused in an internal email why Microsoft was tripping over itself to ensure that everyone knew Call of Duty would still land on PlayStation when Bethesda had been given its Xbox exclusive marching orders, noting in this email, quote, "Did anyone at Xbox think about giving us a heads up on this? Todd's going to DICE in a couple weeks. You don't think a journo might find him and press him on why the below is okay for Call of Duty or any Activision Blizzard games, but not The Elder Scrolls 6 or Starfield?" For the record, when he absolutely was pressed on that question by The Telegraph, Todd Howard gave a public relations all-timer of an answer with, quote, "You don't ever want to leave people out, but at the end of the day, your ability to focus and say, this is the game I want to make, these are the platforms I want to make it on, and being able to really lean in on those is going to make for a better product." Conversely, Pete Hines, someone much more in tune with how humans talk and what people want to hear, apologized to PlayStation owners who were now missing out on Starfield by saying, "All I can say is I apologize because I'm certain that it's frustrating to folks, but there's not a whole lot I can do about it." Which is a refreshing take, and that's what makes this whole trial refreshing. Getting to read these internal documents that finally confirm what Spencer and Xbox have really been thinking and saying. They were investigating buying Sega or Square Enix while publicly denying they were looking at Japanese developers. They were looking at buying Bungie while denying they were looking at Bungie. Spencer decreed that all future Bethesda titles will be Xbox exclusives while saying at this trial that it's too early to decide if Elder Scrolls 6 will be an Xbox exclusive. It's not too early. They've definitely decided. We'll just have to wait until the next trial to confirm that.
It's already the hottest summer on record, and you know what that means? Every social media company is quickly shitting the bed. Twitter's even more of a dung heap, Facebook's even more of a fuck up, Reddit's even more of a slowly rotating gyre, and Tumblr's, well, Tumblr's still as inscrutable as ever. Never change, Tumblos. Of course, this confusion has resulted in a brand new entrant to the social media field, and it's taking the world by storm. I'm of course referring to the Pokemon official discussion forums. Being one of the most popular brands in the world, it's clear that hundreds of billions of people have been clamoring to have in-depth discussions with fellow fans about topics like, where is the best place to catch Pidgeys? What's your favorite Pokemon Center? And how do you train a Gardevoir? Instead, the starter topics are things such as, which girl would you tickle torment? Which Pokemon is the hottest? And how do you train a Gardevoir? The maiden voyage of this forum has already hit a sandbar, with mods finally showing up to wipe the more free-form topics, resulting in posts that now ask about the France regionals, give patch notes for Scarlet Violet, and discuss whether Ash's Butterfree is the best. While that may be more on brand, it does mean that we'll forever be left wondering whether this guy's Charizard as his profile picture looks homeless. I say yes, but what do you think? I'm sure the forums are dying to know.
Just to harp briefly on another nugget of fun from the FTC trial, Microsoft was, as I said, for a time in 2019, keen to buy Square Enix, arguing that it would help Xbox's, quote, mobile segment growth, and that it would add, quote, future mobile exclusive Game Pass offerings. Worth noting that Game Pass is not currently available on mobile, but more relevant to note that Microsoft made the right call in not buying Square Enix, because they can't even grow their own mobile segment. After shutting down Battle Royale title Final Fantasy the First Soldier in January, and then shutting down Echoes of Mana in May, they've now canceled the Just Cause mobile title. But they're learning this one wasn't even released yet, preemptively shuttering it. Well, I mean, it was released just sort of like a little bit in some markets as a beta test. A beta test that still accepted real money for in-game currency, but those purchases are being automatically refunded. Hey, I just think it's great that Square Enix is learning to cancel stuff earlier. Next time, maybe don't even make the bad games.
It's already the hottest summer on record, and you know what that means. It's Sonic's 30th anniversary, and you need some ice cream on your shirt. This ice cream specifically. That's right, it wouldn't be an anniversary without commemorating previous hilarious merchandising failures, and so Sega Shop Europe has made this whole line of summer merchandise depicting not only the ridiculous Sonic the Hedgehog ice cream treat, but they even created one for Shadow, Eggman, and someone I'm calling Sonic's weed-dealing older brother Josh. On second look, they're calling it Metal Sonic, but what is Sonic the Hedgehog if not a land of officially sanctioned OCs do not steal? Besides, no one wants to eat an ice cream that tastes like pennies or Wolfram. If the soft pastel shades aren't your style, Sega Shop knows what you need, and you need manga! Sure, they've got shirts, sunglasses, pins, but my favorite is this hat, because it definitely gives off that Ahegao shirt, but with Sonic vibe. You'll have everyone doing a double take to decide if you're a pervert or if you just like hentai.
I would simply not wear one at all. Then passersby will never know where I fall on the hentai Sonic perversion spectrum.
It's really more of a perversion matrix.
Actually, that's a great point. I tell you what, let's go to the big board. Bring it in!
Coming up, an internal Sega document from the mid-90s was leaked recently, where the CEO said that Sony was their only rival and that Sega would win eventually. I'm not saying history repeats itself, but forget about Nintendo at your own peril, I guess. God, I hope it's clear why I'm saying that.
Because of all the FTC stuff.
Yes, exactly,
yeah.
right? I was like, okay.
They don't, I mean...
It made sense to me, and it's all happening in the same episode. So,
yeah, I mean, I think it makes perfect sense for Sony and Microsoft to not consider Nintendo like their direct competition.
If if you were to like narrow the field, Nintendo Switch is not a performance console.
Yeah.
It is still a console of this era, that kind of idea. But it's like, it's not the let's push polygons until our ass falls off. It's like the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X is the two things that I think if you're shopping for a console,
right,
you're going to pick one or the other of those if those are in your initial decision. But if you were like, do I buy a PS5 and Xbox or like a Nintendo Switch, right? Then you're probably thinking really broadly for maybe because you only have money to afford like one console this generation, or because you're like, I could play any game and I don't give a shit, or you're shopping for somebody else.
So this is funny. I didn't get this in the FTC story, but part of the thing that they had to talk about in court, they asked these like gaming company executives about like to define like a console generation, which has never actually been well defined, right? Like it's there have been points where it's been clear when like
you try to draw technology lines,
when an Xbox and a PlayStation come out in the same year, and it's like, okay, this is a next gen thing or whatever. But like the current generation, which by the way, Microsoft and Sony figure will last until 2028.
Oh, interesting.
Apparently, they consider Generation 9.
Okay,
this is the consensus they came to during this FTC hearing. Whereas the Switch is more of a Generation 8 console, which
means that
it's not the same,
right? So they're
going with like technological power.
Yes,
even though there are games that come. So like, they asked in the testimony, they asked Phil Spencer, it's like, if you release Call of Duty on a Switch, is it going to be as good as it is on an Xbox? And he was like, well, I think our goal is going to be to make sure that if we release a Call of Duty on the Switch, then it's going to look just as good as other Switch titles. And they're like, cool. In your deposition, you said, no, it definitely won't. It's like there was a lot of like in the testimony. They nailed him on. There was internal reporting at Microsoft that included Nintendo as a direct competitor or not, depending on what the report was, and Nintendo was included or not if it made Microsoft look better.
Oh yeah, well that's what you do, right? That's business,
obviously, right? Yeah. It's like well, for the purposes of this report, it would look better if we were also. Then we should do it. If it's like pure console sales numbers, then the Switch beats the pants off us. So we shouldn't. And for this report, we don't include the Switch because the Switch is the second best selling console of all time, behind the PS2.
Yeah.
Unless you include handhelds, in which case it's the third best selling behind the PS2 and then the DS.
Yeah. And where does the Commodore 64 fall in all this?
Not as high as it deserves. No. Well, for a time, it was the best-selling home computer.
Sure was.
I mean, for a time, Myst was the best-selling computer game series because it was on all the CD drives.
Exactly. Have you seen Tetris, the movie?
I haven't yet. I actually really want to.
You should, because there's actually a little bit of stuff about how do you define a video game console versus a computer in it.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a very silly movie. And clearly, when you watch, you're like, ain't no way that happened. And at the same time, you're like, well, maybe some of that happened. A little bit like that, but not exactly like that. But yeah.
Today, So there was another story that Minecraft has earned 4 times as much revenue on the Switch as it has on the Xbox.
Oh, poor Xbox. But also twice as much as on PlayStation.
Yeah, but Microsoft owns Mojang. So that's all good news. The comment from the CFO, who wasn't in the meeting where Phil Spencer was like, all the Bethesda stuff is Xbox exclusives now.
Yes.
And this is from an email communication where Tim Stewart, the CFO, is like, hey, I missed the meeting. Anything come up? And Matt...
Well, this might be relevant.
Yeah, and then Matt Booty was like, well, Phil said this. And Tim's like, really? That's weird. I hadn't thought about this, where it's like, you bought Bethesda and you are cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Yeah.
You are like, you own that company and you've decided that they are not allowed to make nearly as much profit as they would be able to. You just paid a ton of money for them, and now you are hampering that company's ability to give you a return on your investment.
Yeah.
Because you think that it will be better for you in the long run.
Yeah.
For these games to only be Xbox exclusive. And I hadn't thought of looking at it that way, and I think it's It's fascinating.
It is also like there is that who's to say thing that they're not right about that, where it's like, if you own the thing, like why would Gillette make razor blades for Schick, right? Like it's like ultimately you're kind of like, if we know we're competing with this other person, then why would something that we own, a company that we own, actually go ahead and make stuff for the other platform? Sure, it makes us more money overall, especially if our product is better, so people end up buying a whole bunch of copies of Starfield razor blades, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, even if we're making more money, are we not then, like, we're not convincing people to buy our console? And if you're feeling like, boy, I really want to be in this console business, I want to be having my own platform, because we half fucked that up with Windows. If I want to be having my own platform to put games onto, then why wouldn't I say these things only belong to me? Because, God, who's a good example of this? I had one in my head and it's gone. Not talking Nintendo, obviously, at all. Just
the CEO of Microsoft, by the way. Phil Spencer's the head of Xbox,
Yes.
but the actual CEO of Microsoft was like, I don't even like console exclusives. I wish that we could just not do them. I wish we could do away with console exclusives, but Sony won't stop doing them, so we have to.
It's kind of fair in a way too, right? That because like Sega, for example, right? Sega made consoles, then they stopped, and we were saying earlier off camera, I think Sega's a more powerful video game company than ever now that they just said, F it. We don't need to be making consoles. We just need to be focusing on trying to make really good, fun, interesting games. And who cares where they end up?
They are more powerful now than they were then.
I think that's probably the case.
Yeah. Today, we read the secret emails of power. Sorry, this is my fault.
Fine.
We'll get there. Okay, this time for real. Hey, quick PSA, I guess, unrelated to video gaming, but kind of related to one of your stories.
Alrighty.
Talking about social media.
Ah, yes.
Mastodon.
Yes.
Please check out Mastodon. We're all on it.
Yeah. You can find
so is Loading Ready Run. Go sign up for kind.social. And I say that because I saw someone theorize this, saying go sign up for Mastodon. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
Go to kind.social, sign up that way. Yeah. Just do it. It's an easier, more direct path.
So many of us are already on kind.social, including Loading Ready Run fans as well.
There are apps like the Mastodon official app, or Toot, or Tusky, or I use Ivory, which is made by the Tweetbot folks. It's just like Twitter.
Yeah.
But it's not Threads, which is made by Zuckerberg, or Blue Sky, which is made by Jack Twitter Dorsey. There's no single person owns it.
Yeah.
And they don't want or take any of your data.
Yeah. You might find it hard to find cool people to follow, but hey, we're there to start with, and we also boost cool people when we see things.
I make a point
platform.
of it so that people can see other people and know who to follow and stuff.
So you can follow me at Beej at octodon.social, or you can follow
at Graham_LRR at kind.social.
And we can still follow each other because that's how the whole thing works.
Your server ultimately really doesn't matter, and it's super easy to move servers if you want.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the early adoption of Mastodon was hampered by enthusiasts getting really hyped up and intense about like, and there's all these different servers and they're all, and sort of overwhelming people with the decision that you make for server doesn't hugely matter.
Yeah.
It can in a different way, but just go to kind.social and sign up there. It's run by a Loading Ready Run fan, and they're good folks. And then you can go somewhere else later if you want.
Yeah. And we're at Loading Ready Run at kind.social.
Yeah. And the LRMTG one's there too.
Yep.
Not that we're posting a huge amount there, but
once we get internet access back. They said the lights on the street work now.
How do we get this episode out of the building?
Heather?